All right. What's up? Welcome back, everybody. All right. Today we're going to be checking out Understanding Judea and Samaria, Historical, Strategic, and Political Dynamics in the U.S. Israel Relations. And it's from the House on Foreign Affairs Committee of Republicans. Now, I'm just going to play a couple clips real quick so you can kind of see what it's about, and then I'll try to sum it up, what's going on. But basically, what you got here is a panel of, I guess you could say, a Jewish coalition where there's a guy from the Zionist of America and then two other guys. And basically, their approach is kind of like a trifold approach. One guy is the Zionist of America, like chairman. He's just like pretty hardcore, like about the fact that Israel has the rights and they're the dominant kind of group in the area, and that the Palestinians should take whatever bargain that they have. And then there's one guy that's kind of more on a humanitarian angle, but he's still Jewish. And then there's another guy that's more like presenting a legal argument for why the Jewish people should annex the West Bank. So basically, that's what this is about. It's about whether or not Trump agreed to annex the West Bank or not, and they're arguing that basically annexing the West Bank and extending Jewish law to the West Bank are not exactly the same thing. So first we'll check out what Representative Lawler has to say. And he's going to show us basically what the area they're talking about.
Located within what is referred to as the West Bank. Area A in Burgundy is the only area with full control by the Palestinian Authority. Area B, which is more of a mustard color, is under PA administrative control, but Israel has certain security responsibilities there. And then Area C, which is the rest of the map, the beige color, and covers over 60% of the land, is under Israeli civilian and security control. So when people say the West Bank, this is what we're actually talking about. So, Mr.
All right, so I got a map here too, so you can see what he's talking about, like more where the area is in the region. And you can see Egypt is below Jordan. Basically, the Golan Heights is up here next to Syria, and then this is the West Bank area right next to Jordan. So all these other countries are, Arab countries basically. So they do have some concern with that and some claim with that, I would say. We'll check out what Representative Sherman has to say. I don't know, the timestamps got messed up. See, this guy's the head of the Zionist Organization of America, Morton Klein. Hold on. And then this guy, he's the legal guy, Eugene Kontorovich. All right. I don't know. The timestamps got messed up since when they re-uploaded the live stream. Okay, here we go.
The greatest Greek of all, Alexander. Some of the greatest Greek temples to their false gods were built in Alexandria and in Anatolia. This does not mean that I support Greek annexation of northern Egypt or western Turkey. Our first witness, Eugene, you go through a list of places where you look at the previous borders. I'd point out that the U.S. rejects that when it comes to Kosovo, which of course was part of Serbia in the Yugoslav Federation. But I think we will find a time when Palestinian or Arab nationalists demand annexation and Israel rejects it. And I'll tell you why. You go back to your Ukraine example, you say, okay, Crimea, very much part of Ukraine. It was inhabited mostly by Russian speakers, a lot of Tatars. During the decades in which Kiev controlled Crimea, were the Russian speakers disenfranchised or given the full franchise? Yes or no? It's a very simple question.
Is that a question?
Yeah,
They were allowed to vote in Ukrainian elections. Of course.
right. And could you imagine what would happen in the Knesset if everyone living on the West Bank and Gaza were able to vote? I think that would be a civil war in Israel. So annexation without enfranchisement is not something that the United States has ever supported. But I'll point out that I think Donald Trump was very clear when he said in September, I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. I will not allow it. It's not going to happen. And while some have argued that you don't need to annex the West Bank because it's already part of Israel, clearly that's not what President Trump had in mind.
All right. So if we look at territorial integrity, we can see that this is kind of like the main problem with the whole Israel-Palestine thing. That basically they're talking about here that prior to the modern era, there was not a clearly defined system of international boundaries, right? And it's like precisely surveyed national borders only came into clear view in the 18th century. So that's like the 1700s. And some people are saying it might go back to the 1400s. But realistically, it wasn't until like, you know, the 1700s or 1800s that nationalism as a concept even began to be a real thing. Because before that, people just kind of saw themselves as ethnic groups or religious groups or language groups or just tribes or something like that. And the larger concept of like nationalism didn't really even exist in the world because there weren't even groups of people big enough, you know. Like, for example, Germany's like a good example where there was just the different regions like Bavaria and Prussia and I forget some of the other regions, I guess like Hessen and stuff like that. And then they were all united together into a national German state, basically because they all spoke German, but they weren't really the same groups of people. And that's kind of what they're getting at here, is that it's just a problem of this whole, like, it's like a historical problem where basically nation states didn't even exist until after World War I with the League of Nations. And now the like thing is so precise, the borders are so precise, and they're like having to deal with that, right? Because it says territorial integrity is the principle under international law where sovereign states have the right to defend their borders and all territory in them from another state, right? Under this principle, forcible imposition of a border change is an act of aggression. So that's why Trump can't really change the border of the West Bank, because it's considered an act of aggression, right? But then the problem comes in when you look at Israeli occupied territory, and it clearly says here that, you know, parts of the Golan Heights are considered occupied territory, and it's considered the longest military occupation in modern history. So you can see why people could have a claim to be upset, right? But, you know, the Jewish coalition here, mainly, hold on. You know, mainly this guy, Klein and Konochovich, basically they're claiming that, you know, since Israel has rights to be there historically, that they're the ones that are under threat from the Palestinians. And now it's also interesting to note that there are no Palestinians at this meeting, it's only Jewish people. You can see in the back here that there's some Palestinian supporters in the back row there. They're wearing those like headcloth things or those cloth things. But you can see it's like a very difficult situation if you're like seriously like debating like what's right or wrong and not just being like, oh, well, F the Israelis or whatever. Because they're there now. And basically, they have a lot of similar claims to right wing, like white people, where they're saying that they feel threatened by the Palestinians and that they're open to extend the same rights and liberties that they extend to Jewish people in Israel to the Palestinians. But like Klein saying that, let me see if I can find that they're producing a lot of propaganda. He has some old propaganda, but that looks like it's from like the 70s or 80s or something. But he's saying that basically, as long as they keep producing this type of negative propaganda about Israeli people, that it's going to be very difficult to integrate Palestinians and Muslims. Now, I don't know about the Jewish propaganda. I'm sure it's much more sophisticated than this, because this looks like kind of old. But I mean, I think both sides do have a point. I mean, if people are going to create propaganda that's like a murderous type of propaganda, that they should feel threatened and feel like they need to defend themselves or whatever. So it's kind of like they say, it's an intractable situation or whatever. But like, I mean, obviously this propaganda is old or whatever, but like I'm saying, there's a lot of people here discussing it, and at least in part, they're not going to completely annex the West Bank, but at the same time, I think they need some type of assurances that Palestinians are going to stop attacking them too, which makes complete sense. Now, if you want to make like a historical argument going back to World War II that they just shouldn't be there in the first place, I don't know. I mean, it kind of, I mean, they're using like biblical arguments and the fact that their people are there, which that's what Sherman was talking about, that it's not really the best argument because, there are Greek temples in Turkey. And so therefore Greek people should be able to take over Turkey, right? Or he even said, should a Native American be able to take over his house because they probably have artifacts there, right? So if you're going to give a historical, like biblical argument, it's not really that strong. It seems like the strongest argument is just this, fact that they're there now and they want a war, basically. And so you can't change the border now unless you want to start another war, right? And that's basically what the like lawyer guy was saying. And then they're arguing whether or not basically annexation, the word annexation means like Jewish people taking over the territory, or whether it means extending Jewish law to the territory, but allowing the Palestinians to stay there, but under Jewish law. And obviously everybody knows that's not going to work because they have two separate metaphysical claims in their religion. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I'm just giving you the kind of like TLDR of this like 2 hour long or hour and a half long debate. It's a pretty good debate. There was one point where they were talking about Nick Fuentes in it too. I'm trying to find that part. I think it was earlier. They kind of messed up my timestamps. See if this is it.
of a variety of different subcommittees, and I look forward to filling in this role. As to this hearing, we can start with a map of Judea and Samaria, and we will see
For members of Congress, as we talk about long-term resolutions to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and other topics at present time.
and in Alexandria, a city founded.
I think the president of Heritage, Kevin Roberts, has subsequently very clearly denounced Nick Fuentes, and most importantly, our work to combat anti-Semitism has vastly expanded in the past couple years, certainly since I came aboard in the past year.
I'll go to finally to Mr. Altman. Venomous coalition. I think that would be a civil war in Israel. So annexation without enfranchisement is not something that the United States has ever supported. But I'll point out that I think Donald Trump was very clear when he said in September, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. I will not allow it. It's not going to happen." And while some have argued that you don't need to annex the West Bank because it's already part of Israel, clearly that's not what President Trump had in mind. I've got a question for Mr. Klein that you're sitting next to the gentleman from the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts said conservatives should not be canceling Nick Fuentes, and he excoriated those who called out Tucker Carlson as a venomous coalition of the globalist class. I believe you have called out Tucker Carlson for platforming a man who says Hitler was very effing cool. Are you part of a venomous coalition of the global class when you call for the denunciation of Mr. Fuentes?
Yes, Mike Huckabee's part of the venomous coalition, President Trump, Mark Levin. This was an outrageous statement. Obviously, when Tucker Carlson not only platforms a vicious Jew hater and denier of the Holocaust who praises Stalin and Hitler without repudiating him at that interview, had he had him there as an interview and condemned him for virtually everything he said, that would be one thing. But to be nodding his head and letting him go on and on with his outrageous statement, that was the crime.
I'll now shift to the gentleman from the Heritage Foundation. How comfortable are you staying at the Heritage Foundation given this dispute about the man who thinks that Hitler is cool?
I don't think there's any dispute at Heritage about Nick Fuentes. I think the president of Heritage, Kevin Roberts, has subsequently very clearly denounced Nick Fuentes, and most importantly, our work to combat anti-Semitism has vastly expanded in the past couple years, certainly since I came aboard in the past year.
I'll go to finally to Mr. Altman. Can you think of how Israel, that if Israel were to annex the West Bank, do you think the world would tolerate the decades and decades of disenfranchising those who live there? And when I say disenfranchising, they might be allowed to vote in local elections, but no franchise to vote for the national government.
When I think of examples of countries that have had large populations where people by nature of race, religion, ethnicity have been systematically disenfranchised, it's not ended well. Whether it's the French presence in Algeria, southern Rhodesia, on and on and on, and as we currently see with the Chinese occupation of Tibet, it creates and also with the Uyghurs in Western China, it creates a sense of injustice.
Thank you, the ranking member. I would just note there are Palestinian Israeli citizens serving in the Knesset. Okay, so show me the Arab state where there are Jews serving in their government, and look forward to having
Bahrain.
Yeah,
But
Bahrain.
I would point out Bahrain.
Out of how many?
Yeah.
Out of how many? And that
Okay, well, he did point out some, but then you're like, well, how many though? All right. So that was the video. And you can see they were talking about the Nick Tucker thing a little bit there. And yeah, it's very complicated. So you can check out the debate if you want, but I think I kind of summed it up. Not sure. But all right, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching if you did. I'll be back later. Talk to you then, and peace.